funding to support higher education.
I support federal funding for higher education. I received my college education through federal funds, some through scholarships I received from Our Lady of Lake University, mostly from federal funds. The way we're able to keep those federal funds coming for the children and make sure that they're able to use them is to make sure that, for example, we have $2 trillion in offshore accounts by banks. Make sure that Congress is able to get that money from those offshore accounts, put our foot down, we bail those banks out, bring that money back here to use for federal funding for education that we support. We also have to conduct oversight to make sure that there's not a lot of waste going on. When you have the waste in the government, that when you find that waste, you can bring that money back into the coffers and use it to fund the federal programs. These programs are good. They help send kids to college, and they need to be kept viable. I was able to use it, and many other people up here were probably able to use it. I support it completely.
Education is key to the future of this country, and therefore, I totally support the federal government funding education. Let me tell you something. There's a lot of rhetoric out there, and that's why we're having all this gridlock in Washington. You know, the left and the right, and the one thing that they're attacking is education. The biggest mistake that could happen on this country, and actually it's an assault on our young people, because it's tough enough to be able to get an education, which is your key to success, but not only just for individual success, but for the success and the viability and the strength of this nation. Other countries, China, Korea, Japan, you can name any country, they are putting more of their GDP into education. Why? Because they know that if their country is to remain strong, they must have an educated workforce. And that is the last thing you should cut, is education. Right now, our children, our kids, I just have a son that graduated a couple years ago, and we're stuck with a $50,000 student loan. Well, thank God the government allowed for those low-interest loans that allowed him to go to school. I was a single mother trying to go to school. Now, I didn't qualify for the grants because I was a working mother, but I'm going to tell you, I could not have done it under today's cost. And I'm very concerned about the future for our young people that cannot access student loans, student Pell Grants, because that is what is under assault today in Washington, and that is why I want to go to Washington to make sure that simply does not happen. We need to have an educated workforce for the strength and the viability of our nation, and I will defend it to the very end. Thank you very much.
I fully support fully funding education. But folks, I think what's important here is not just funding higher education support, more people attending college. To me, education is the greatest equalizer out there for a person to have a better life. You know, when I was in high school, I took part in a program where I spent the summer in a university setting, 8 weeks, where I was able to get my education and also was able to work. And what it did in staying in campus, it exposed me to campus life. It exposed me to, you know, how it is to be in school. And coming from a town of Port Isabel, a very small town, it really opened up my eyes. And it drove me to what opportunities are out there. So it's not funding, when we talk about funding higher education, it's not funding the universities itself. It's other programs, so work-study programs. It's these programs like the one I attended, or like the one I had here at the university, right here at UTBTSC. I was selected to take part in a program where, you know, we partnered with the banking community here. The university partnered with a multi-bank consortium here in Brownsville, where finance majors were able to go and take part in the banking system so we could learn what it was to be in banking and in the business world while we were attending our senior year here. Those are programs that need to be continued funded. It's not funding just university and programs. It's about access. It's about giving our students, giving anybody that wants to attend higher education and expose them, not just to the university setting, but to the business world, to where they're going to be working, real life experiences. And that's what I would support. You know, it's not, again, funding the universities to grow or the It's the Pell Grant program that I would support, fully funding, and the student loan programs as well. And that's what I will do as your next congressman. Thank you.
Folks, we've got to get away from federally mandating programs that we don't fund. Our school system right now is in a crossroads because of a lack of state funding. And then, of course, they look at the federal government to try to produce that funding when they cut it. We need to make it a little more simple, folks. We need to let teachers go in and teach what they need to teach to the kids. We need to unbridle them. We need to get these kids back out, learning again, learning real world and what really matters out in society. When you talk about federal funding, you're talking about higher education. That's where most of our dollars are spent. I think we ought to free up some of those dollars to high school and to junior high and to elementary school education. I don't think we can ignore the fact that our educational scores are dropping. I don't think we can ignore the fact that a lot of our students can't afford to go to college. I graduated 20 plus years ago from college. I still owe school up. But I'll take that with me probably till I die. But my goal is to make sure that my children don't get into debt when they go into school. And I think that's the goal for all of us. But as a federal government, that's the kind of things that we need to ensure, that our kids can go to college and they can get out of college with a degree without having a noose around their neck. Now, we talked about different things that I would do if elected to Congress by bringing in the veterans here that would sustain a lot of the growth in our universities. We talked about focusing on energy, which would create a lot of industry for these colleges, to bring in people and personnel to grow them in the right industries. But we also need to focus a lot of those federal funds on research and development. Folks, we need to have a 20-year plan. We need to have a university that can specialize in certain things. Look at our geography. We have agriculture, we have marine biology, focusing on industries that will take us into the future that we can become specialists in. That, I think, is the way to go with higher education. Thank you.
I will support increased federal funding for higher education, along with funding from pre-K all the way to higher education. We do need some reform in our education. As a single mother raising 3 children, I went to college part-time while I worked full-time. And what should have taken 8 years took me 4 years. What should have